from Maryland is recognized.
Madam Speaker, Chairman Rogers and I are here today to discuss the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, known as CISPA. The bill simply allows the government to give cyber threat intelligence to the private sector to protect its networks from cyber attacks. I don't want to repeat a lot of what the chairman has said, but first thing I want to do is to acknowledge the leadership of the chairman. 3 years ago, when we took over the leadership of the House Select Intelligence Committee, realized how serious the threat of cyber attacks were to our country, to our businesses, to our health, safety, and welfare. We decided to pull together a group of representatives from different parts of this issue. We had the administration involved. We had the privacy groups involved, including the ACLU. We brought in the industry because we knew that we had to put together a bill that would pass the House, the Senate, and signed by the President. And so what we attempted to do was get input, and then we put together a bill. And by the way, the bill is only 27 pages. It's probably a record in this Congress, and we did read the bill. Now, what we attempted to do in this bill is to address a situation where now that the government cannot really communicate with the private sector to try to help protect our citizens, our businesses from cyber attacks. The reason for that is in 1947 there is a law that says that the intelligence community cannot communicate or pass information to another entity that does not have clearances. So basically what our bill does is to allow the sharing of information, which we can't do now, to the private sector. Now, why is this important? And this is something that is very important because most people don't understand this. In the United States of America, we have 10 companies. We're called the providers that control 80% of our network, 80% of our network. So in order for us to protect the United States of America from cyber attacks, we need to make sure that the government has a partnership with the private sector and that they can pass the threat information so that the government can help protect. As an example, if your house is being robbed, you call 911 and the police comes. And that's the same scenario that we're looking here, only it's a lot more sophisticated. And again, as the chairman said, passing information, mostly zeros and ones, to the government so we can work together to protect our network. Now, why is this so important? And I think it's important we get into some of the issues of threats. Just recently, we understand and we know that the Washington Post, New York Times, the Wall Street Journal were cyber attacked. And basically, it's our understanding that they did this, especially China, to intimidate the paper sources within China. We had our U.S. banks. It's very serious for U.S. banks to be attacked and to hack. You know, most of what our banks have are records and information. And to be able to shut down a bank or to be able to manipulate or get privacy information could be very destructive to our banks. And yet this is being done, and it's been done for a period of time. Media reports have said that Iran, a rogue country that we know exports terrorism, we know what Iran's beliefs are, and yet reports have said that Iran attacked Saudi Arabia's oil company, one of the largest in the world, Aramco, and wiped out 30,000 computers in a weekend. And let me say this, Iran is not a very sophisticated country as it comes to cyber, but they have the sophistication to be able to knock out 30,000 computers and really shut their businesses down for a period of time. This is what's happening in the United States. Cyber Command, whose job it is to protect our military networks, estimated that in the last couple of years that we have had, the United States of America has had $400 billion, not million, $billion worth of American trade secrets are being stolen from U.S. companies every year, costing these companies market share and jobs. That's probably the biggest theft in the history of the world. And yet we still are not in an ability to help government working with business. You have Secretary Napolitano, Director of FBI. You have the head of the Director of the NSA, Alexander, and all three have said, they said one of the biggest fears they have now are these attacks, and that unless we have a sharing opportunity between government and between business, they feel that they cannot protect our country from these cyber attacks the way that they should. So it's so important that we need to act now, on this bill. Now, we can pass bills in the House all day long, but if the Senate doesn't pass a bill and the President doesn't sign it, where are we? We were able to pass our bill last year in a bipartisan manner, and yet our bill went to the Senate and it stalled, and the bill didn't go anywhere. So Chairman Rogers and I started again. But what we said to each other, and we discussed, was that we need to address the issue of privacy. Because even though we felt strongly that our bill does protect privacy, we knew there was groups out there, especially the privacy groups, that felt that there was not enough protection in our bill. So we rolled up our sleeves, we listened to the issues raised by the privacy groups, the administration had issues with respect to privacy, and we changed the bill. Now, I don't want to repeat what the chairman said, but basically we made some significant changes to our bill to deal with the issue of privacy. And we provided, first, there's a Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, and now that board must review our program. That's one area of oversight. We have in the intelligence community, we have privacy officers in each department, in each area. And these privacy people have to look at the threat information. They must also conduct a classified and unclassified review. That's the second oversight that was changed in the bill. An annual report must be sent to Congress. And we have what we call the Inspector General, whose job it is to oversee the different agencies they represent. And those are 4 areas of oversight just in the bill. We also made sure that the privacy groups were concerned, we only have 5 elements where this bill applies, which means if you're a tax cheat and we pick up some information, that can't be used against you. But the privacy groups were concerned about the issue of national security being one of those elements in this bill. They thought it was too broad. So Chairman Rogers and I got together. We were able to get the votes on both sides of the aisle, and we were able to take a position that the national security issue is not in the bill anymore. Now, we feel national security is being covered by one of the elements in the bill that says it deals with the issue of protecting people's life or liberty. And so we feel that we have covered the national security. But one of the most important issues was the issue of minimization. Now, what is minimization? Most people don't know what it is. Basically, minimization is if information is passed and there is information that is private information, that there needs to be an entity out there that will take that information out so that information is not used, that private information. So we now added to the bill that any of the zeros and ones that are passed, and that's what's happening. But if there's for some reason why somebody's personal information is passed when those zeros and ones are coming back and forth, that we have what we call 100% minimization, and the government will make sure that every single entity and all this information is passed will be 100% minimized, and if there's any personal information in there at all, it will be knocked out. And that's very significant, and that gives a lot of coverage. As you can see, and this is important, you don't have security if you don't have privacy. And that was one of the themes Chairman Rogers and I used in the beginning. If you don't have security, you don't have privacy. And even though we thought our had it, we felt there was a perception, we heard what was said, and we made these changes. Now, there's one other issue that is out there that's very important, and I think it's also extremely relevant. And that's the issue of when the information is passed and we're attempting to protect our citizens, we're protecting our businesses from these attacks, and hopefully from a destructive attack like Iran did to Aramco in Saudi Arabia. There was a perception out there, and we again had to deal with perceptions. And the perception was that if this information that is being passed, this zeros and ones that are being passed back and forth, what is a point of entry? And we did not want the perception to be that the military in any way would be in charge or would be the entity that is overseeing this. We felt very strongly and we felt that it had to be civil. So Chairman Rogers and I, along with the Chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, McCall, and the Ranking Member Thompson, we have an amendment here today which is very significant, and I'm sure it will be very well received by the privacy groups in the White House, that what we're going to do, that the bill will now say that the point of entry when the information is passed, will be the Department of Homeland Security, and that is a very